Hello everyone. Welcome to Story Hub channel. Discover real stories of wife betrayals, shocking twists and turns and their secrets. Hit the subscribe button and get to our story. 3 years ago, my wife, Jessica, and I, Mike, were completely immersed in the world of art. There wasn't a trace of pretentiousness in us. At least, I like to think so. We simply had a deep love for all kinds of art. From Dutch cityscapes to primitive African sculptures, from pre-Columbian masks to the surreal fantasies of Salvador Dali. We were genuinely passionate about it all. Our home was adorned with the finest pieces we could afford, and we made it a habit to visit art exhibitions and museums at least once a month, often every couple of weeks. We were active members of the 2 closest art galleries and attended every private exhibit, vernissage, and gala evening they hosted. We even took trips to New York and Washington for special exhibitions. Over the 8 years that Jessica and I had been married, we had gathered a good circle of friends who shared our love for art, though we had other interests and different groups of friends as well. However, our art community friends were the ones we were closest to. In fact, except for one person, we'd much rather spend time chatting with our art buddies than with anyone else. That one exception was Tom's second wife, Lisa. For Tom's sake, I tried to get along with Lisa, but it was no easy task. She came off as uneducated, didn't appreciate most classical works, including masterpieces by Monet and Van Gogh, and constantly made offhand comments about pieces that the rest of us found fascinating. Our group often wondered how Tom could tolerate her lack of sophistication, but there was one topic we guys never touched: why he married her. Lisa is undeniably attractive, like a warm tropical breeze on a cold winter day. Although her face is just slightly above average, and she usually dressed pretty conservatively, by the time this story began, it was clear Tom's patience for her simplicity had worn thin despite her appealing looks. He frequently criticized her in public, leading to some awkward situations that required my mediation skills. I'm a professional mediator and negotiator, and I enjoy applying my work expertise to my personal life. However, when it came to handling Tom and Lisa, even though my stress relief efforts always paid off in the end, I never received any acknowledgement, let alone gratitude, from either of them, though the rest of the group always showed appreciation. Despite my reservations about Lisa, I was always courteous to her, and she reciprocated in the few one-on-one encounters we had. I'd known Lisa for about 3 years when the event that triggered this story took place. The largest local art gallery was celebrating its 50th anniversary, with an exhibition of Joan Miraux's paintings and rare lithographs from around the globe, including the original of what might be his most famous work, oddly titled Sculptures. This gallery was also renowned for its exceptional food and drinks at every event, and this promised to be the best one yet. I was really looking forward to attending. About a week before the event, Lisa called Jessica, and it was clear she was in a pretty emotional state. Apparently, Tom was scheduled to go out of town for work. The event was set for Wednesday evening, and for some reason, Lisa was really eager to attend. Jessica told me that Lisa caught her off guard with a statement. "I know most folks in your group probably see me as a bit of a simpleton and a bore, but I'm really trying to fit in, and you and Mike have always been the most understanding. Could I possibly join you two?" Sure," Jessica replied, a bit unsure of what else to say. It was obvious that Lisa was thrilled by her response. Mike," Jessica said to me not long after, wearing a slightly apologetic look. That was Lisa on the phone. "Tom's going to be out of town for the 50th anniversary celebration, and she asked if she could come along with us. I couldn't say no." I grumbled. "Great. I think I'm going to need a stiff drink, or maybe a couple of pills to keep my nerves in check, or maybe both." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Jessica chuckled. She was actually really nice and mentioned that she's trying hard to fit in and learn more about art. "Maybe we should embrace the role of being her art mentors," I said with a touch of sarcasm, raising an eyebrow. "Now behave yourself," Jessica laughed, giving me a playful jab in the side. I was starting to come to terms with the idea that Jessica and I would be taking turns entertaining Lisa at the gala when, a few days later, another surprise came my way. "Mike, darling," Jessica called out to me. Whenever she used darling, I knew something was coming that I wouldn't like. "What now?" I responded with a hint of irritation. "You know how much I've been looking forward to the celebration, but something urgent came up at work, and to advance my career, I really need to be out of town from Wednesday morning until late Friday evening. I'm so sorry, she said, tracing her finger gently across my chest. The first thing that crossed my mind was, "Is John Miller going on this trip?" I asked, not hiding my displeasure. "Yes, along with 2 other colleagues," she replied, sounding a bit defensive. Then, as if trying to lighten the mood, she added with a joking tone that didn't amuse me at all, "Why are you always so worried about him?" "Because, to put it bluntly, and I hope it's just figuratively, though I'm not entirely sure, he's always hovering around you, that's why," I said firmly. "Oh, Mike, you're totally misinterpreting things," Jessica insisted. "Why does he always try to slow dance with you at every one of your company events? Or how about that time we saw him and his so-called girlfriend at the Passion Fruit nightclub? How did he know we were going to be there?" "We've gone over this before," she said, sounding a bit annoyed. "It was just a coincidence, and besides, he dances with other women too, just faster dances. And let's not forget his comment last time when I told him I only slow dance with you," I muttered. "He was just joking," she scoffed. "Well, I didn't find it funny," I shot back. "Oh, honey, don't be jealous," she said, trying to soothe me. "You know you're way better looking than he is." I did think I looked much better, and I knew I could easily put him in his place if it came down to it. But I also knew that women in general, and Jessica in particular, don't view looks the same way men do. Her last boyfriend before we got married bore a strong resemblance to John, and she seemed to be head over heels for him until he foolishly let her go and then failed miserably when he tried to win her back. Still feeling a bit miffed, I asked, "Do you really have to go on this trip?" "Yes, sweetheart, I do. You can call Brad if you want to check," she replied, trying to soothe me as she stroked my chest again. "Brad's the CEO of her company, and he's a straight shooter." I was grumbling under my breath when Jessica wrapped her arms around me. But then, a whole new concern popped into my head. I gently pushed Jessica back to arm's length and blurted out, "So, are you going to call Lisa and tell her she can't come with us since you won't be there?" "Why would I do that?" Jessica asked, pausing for a moment with a confused look on her face. "You're still going, aren't you? She can still go with you." "I was counting on you to help handle her endless questions and unpredictable behavior. Now, I have to deal with her on my own?" I grumbled. "Our other friends will be there. Be a gentleman, Mike. Like I said, she's making an effort to fit in. It might even be fun." "Yeah, probably," I groaned. "You'll be nursing a drink the whole time, won't you?" Jessica chuckled. "Let me help ease those nerves of yours," she added, massaging my shoulders. I knew she was teasing. But since I figured everything would turn out okay, I played along. Once we'd both relaxed, I scooped her up in my arms, carried her to the shower, and after some playful splashing and giggling, brought her to bed. It wasn't easy for me to fall asleep that night. I was still upset about her business trip with John and the fact that I'd be stuck dealing with Lisa on my own, since I was pretty sure our friends wouldn't be much help. Eventually, I drifted off into a restless sleep. I was so anxious that 2 days later, I finally gave Brad a call. I knew him fairly well from my work with the company, and had even played doubles tennis with him a couple of times when his usual partner couldn't make it to the country club tournaments. I tried not to come across as too nosy or obvious, and I think I managed to pull it off by starting the conversation with a question about getting tickets to the next match of the local tennis club's world team. He confirmed that Jessica really did need to go, but that only she and John were going, no one else. However, this decision was made pretty recently, so maybe she wasn't lying. I was still bothered, though. That Tuesday night before her trip, I made sure to wear Jessica out until she was completely exhausted. The next morning, she made a few complaints, but they sounded more playful than serious, so I decided to push down my anxiety about her spending 2 nights alone with John. But then I had another issue to deal with. I had to take Lisa to the gala myself. I called her around noon on Wednesday, half hoping I could find an excuse to back out, even though I'd already decided I'd go. But she was so excited about it that I would have felt like a total jerk if I canceled. "I'm really looking forward to seeing the Miro exhibit with someone who doesn't constantly put me down like Tom does," she blurted out at one point. I braced myself for a challenging evening, but promised myself, I'd make the best of it. For the event, I was dressed in a formal suit, so when I went to pick Lisa up, I was in a tuxedo. She stepped out wearing an elegant, floor-length electric blue dress, strapless, sleeveless, with an open back and bare shoulders, and a slit that ran nearly up to her thigh on the left side. She had a stunning sapphire necklace around her neck and a subtle sapphire bracelet on her left wrist. "You look fantastic," I said sincerely, helping her drape a pashmina over her shoulders as we headed to the gallery. "Thanks. You're the best-looking penguin I've ever seen," she grinned back. The small talk on the drive to the gallery felt a bit awkward, but once we arrived, had some oysters, shrimp, and veggies, and downed a couple of generous glasses of wine, the conversation started to flow a lot more easily. As we toured the Miro exhibit, Lisa peppered me with questions and comments. She didn't seem particularly taken with Joan Miro's early work. When Miro was just starting out, he was heavily influenced by the realism of the Dutch masters. You can see how he pays close attention to objects here, which later translates into the clear biomorphic forms that became his trademark style, I explained to Lisa as we examined one piece, trying not to come off too pompous. "Honestly, this looks like a lousy still life to me." Lisa grinned, finishing her second glass of white wine. They don't serve red in galleries. "I might need another glass if the rest of them look like this," she joked, holding out her glass. The way she said it was actually pretty funny, and since I'm not a fan of oysters either, I smiled back and went to get her another glass. When I caught up with her, she was standing there thoughtfully gazing at a beautiful bird revealing the unknown to a pair of lovers. "Thanks, Mike," she said, her eyes lingering on my hand for a moment as she took the glass from me. "This stuff can be pretty overwhelming. I'm struggling to wrap my head around why things are the way they are here," she added. "More seasoned art lovers than me," I replied with a grin, "believe that in this piece, Miro used a solid background to highlight simplified shapes and lines, which together create the impression of a complex constellation in the night sky. Some say that when he painted this, the chaotic and turbulent atmosphere in Europe mirrored Miro's own feelings as he and his family were fleeing the Nazis." "Wow!" Lisa giggled. She stood there in thought for a moment and then said, "I can see it now. Thanks, Mike. You're a genius." I laughed. "I'll take genius, but let's skip the superlatives," I joked. She gave me a warm and genuine hug. Honestly, I found myself enjoying the role of tour guide for Lisa as we explored the rest of the collection. Rather than being silly or crude, most of her comments were either humorous or thoughtful, and some were even pretty insightful. And that's saying something, considering I had already poured her a fourth glass of wine. Lisa saved her best comments for last when we got to Miro's piece titled Motherhood. "Is that supposed to be a woman?" she giggled after studying the work for a couple of minutes, finishing her fourth glass of wine. "Yep, it sure is," I grinned. "It's obviously very schematic, stripped down to its most basic form." "Well, I think she's got nice breasts, even if she does look anorexic," Lisa smirked. "But I have to say, I've got some art at my place that's way more aesthetically pleasing." "They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder," I quoted. "True. But the art I have at my house is, in your eyes, much more beautiful and striking than anything in this collection," she grinned. We mingled with some of our friends, and it turned out to be a really enjoyable conversation, with Lisa joining in enthusiastically. She even winked at me every time she echoed one of my remarks. By around 9:30 p.m., people began to head out. Lisa excused herself to powder her nose, and I found a quiet spot to call Jessica on her cell. Using a phone in the gallery isn't exactly encouraged, if not outright forbidden, so I had to keep out of sight. Well, I tried to call Jessica, but my call went straight to voicemail. I left a cheerful message letting her know the evening was actually going well and not the disaster I had feared, and asked her to call me whenever she could. On the way home, it became clear that Lisa had had a bit too much to drink, though she wasn't so far gone that she couldn't keep her composure. I was taken aback when she made an unexpected comment early on. "I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, Mike, but I really need to thank you for all the times you've helped me out of those awkward situations, when Tom would make those humiliating remarks. I truly appreciate it," she said, giving my bicep a squeeze when she finished. "I hope I was able to help," I muttered, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. She went on earnestly. I also want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being so kind to me tonight. I bet you were dreading it, but I hope it wasn't too awful for you. I fumbled a bit as I replied, Actually, I had a good time tonight. I hope you did too. Just then, the headlights of a passing car caught her blue eyes and sapphire necklace at the same time. It was a pretty striking sight. I had a wonderful time, she said brightly, flashing a big smile. When we arrived at her place, she took my right hand and casually asked, Would you like to see the artwork I have at home that, in most people's opinion, deserves more praise than Miro's motherhood? It was a little after 10 p.m., and I never went to bed before midnight, even on weeknights. Sure, I replied. Let me get the door for you. I quickly made my way to the passenger side and opened the door for Lisa, gently taking her hand to help her out. The slit in her dress parted, revealing more of her left thigh, more enticing than I had noticed in my earlier glimpses. I helped her with the keys as she unlocked the door. She closed the curtains in her living room and excused herself, saying, I need to make a quick stop before I show you the artwork I'm so proud of. She smiled. Can I get you something to drink? I think I've had enough at the party, I replied. I should probably head home soon anyway. Oh, don't worry. You'll be perfectly sober by the time you leave. If you change your mind, the bar's over there, she said, pointing to a small bar between the living room and the kitchen. I'll be back in just a minute, she added, and then disappeared somewhere deeper into the house. I wandered around the living room, taking in the paintings on the walls, and decided to try calling Jessica's cell again. It went straight to voicemail once more. I left a brief message. Give me a call back. I felt a bit uneasy but shrugged it off and continued examining the artwork on the walls. I'd only been to Tom's house once before, back when he was still married to his first wife. It seemed like most of the pieces had changed since then. Some of them were nice enough, but none really captivated me, and there certainly wasn't anything more beautiful or dramatic than Miro's work, as Lisa had claimed back at the gallery. Maybe she's grabbing a painting or sculpture from her bedroom, I thought, as I continued to look around at the living room walls. Then I heard a noise to my left. I turned just as Lisa walked back into the living room, smiling. She was still wearing the high heels, the sapphire necklace, and now a sapphire ankle bracelet, and nothing else. I was lucky I hadn't picked up a drink from the bar, because I would have dropped it for sure. So, Mike, tell me honestly, is this work of art more beautiful and dramatic than anything you've seen in marble or on canvas? She asked, clearly rhetorical, as she moved her arms and smoothly spun in a full circle. I was completely stunned, speechless, and captivated by what I saw. There was no doubt. Lisa's body was the most incredible I'd ever seen, whether in person or in the media. She struck a pose, placing one foot in front of the other, bending her knees slightly and resting her hands on her hips, then grinned. Well, what do you think of my masterpiece? Better than anything in the gallery, don't you think? I muttered something like, hell yeah. But given that my mind was in overdrive, I'm not entirely sure what I said. One thing's for certain. It's way more exciting than anything you've ever come across before. She giggled, walking toward me. As she closed the distance, her smile grew even more self-assured. I'm guessing that means you really like what you see, art lover, she teased with another giggle. To be honest, I can't fully explain how what happened next came to pass. Nor can I say exactly what was running through my mind. Was it purely physical desire? I don't know if thoughts of Jessica crossed my mind, or why my calls were going straight to voicemail. I don't know if images of Tom flashed before me. I just don't know. I got up from my seat and slowly undressed, my eyes fixed on the most stunning piece of art I'd ever laid eyes on. I made Lisa comfortable on the couch, then, in one fluid motion, I immersed myself in her, lifting her legs so her heels rested on my shoulders. It was clear she'd been keeping up with her Kegel exercises. After we both caught our breath, we headed to the bedroom, though we didn't get much sleep. The next morning, at 9 a.m., we sat down to a wonderful breakfast of blueberry pancakes and sausage pie, which Lisa had cooked and served at the table. As I ate, my brain finally started to kick back into gear after the whirlwind of the night before. Thoughts began to swirl in my head, wondering why Jessica hadn't called me back, how lucky Tom was to have Lisa. though he didn't seem to appreciate the incredible work of art right in front of him, and how I'd just had the most amazing experience of my life with someone I'd once viewed so negatively. If I didn't have an important mediation at 11 a.m., and given the need to go home and change out of my tuxedo, I would have stayed all morning. "Lisa, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? I think we need to talk about a few things," I said, getting up from the table. My stomach was now as satisfied as my libido. "I could cook us dinner here," she offered with a smile. "Let me take you out somewhere," I suggested. "Do you have the day off?" "You caught me," she laughed. "And I have a flexible schedule, so I'm taking the day off. How about 6 p.m. then?" "Pick me up," she giggled. "I hope you can stay the night again." "That's one of the things we're going to discuss," I replied with a smile. Jessica finally called me on my cell around 10:50 a.m., just as I was about to start the mediation I was leading. I told her I couldn't talk at the moment, but I didn't ask why she hadn't called me the night before, which seemed to put her at ease a bit. I asked her to call me later in the evening. Despite the lack of sleep, I performed exceptionally well during the mediation session. Maybe it was the lingering rush of testosterone and endorphins still coursing through my veins. By 4 p.m., I had successfully brokered a deal that both parties were happy with, and I even managed to take a hot shower and grab an hour's nap before heading out to pick up Lisa. When I arrived to pick her up, Lisa was wearing a yellow sundress that looked like it was made just for her. She was in high spirits, slipping her arm around my shoulders as we walked to the car. As we pulled up to the restaurant, she giggled softly. Over dinner, we steered clear of talking about art. I was pleasantly surprised by how much she knew about music, tennis, and hockey. She told me she had been a child prodigy on the violin, but her career was cut short after a serious injury she sustained playing women's hockey as a teenager. After recovering, she learned to play the piano, but decided against pursuing a professional music career. Instead, she got into event planning in college and was now doing really well in that field. When we got back to her place, she squeezed my hand tightly as I walked her to the door. "We still have a lot to talk about. Things we couldn't discuss at the restaurant," she smiled. Then she laughed and added, "Come into my living room," said the spider to the fly. Once inside, she sat down next to me on the couch and took my hands in hers. "Mike, I have to confess, I seduced you. I've wanted this for a long time, but I never had the chance until last night. Let me be completely honest. I want to get rid of Tom, and I want you, especially after last night. You rocked my world like no one else ever has." Once again, she left me speechless. I wasn't sure if my feelings for her, which had done a complete 180-degree in just one day, were real or just a temporary infatuation, but I was eager to find out. "Can you take tomorrow off work?" I asked. "I'll do it if that's what you want," she chuckled. "Let's do another 24-hour compatibility check." That night, we made love again, and spent hours exploring each other's bodies, discovering erogenous zones we didn't even know existed. On Friday afternoon, we had a little dress rehearsal for the concert, and it was clear that I was a novice in music compared to Lisa, who was an expert. My phone was on the whole time, but Jessica never called. When Lisa and I finally parted ways late on Friday evening, I said, "I have a lot to think about. What about you?" "I suppose I should have pretended to be at least a little conflicted," she chuckled. "But honestly, I don't have anything to think about. I just need to wait and see what you decide." When I got home early on Friday evening, Jessica was already there. She had a look on her face that I couldn't quite read, something between deep thought, confusion, and maybe even a bit of fear. "Where have you been, honey? What's going on?" she asked. "I was at Lisa's place." "Oh, why?" "I think she's planning to end her marriage with Tom." "Did you talk to her about it?" "Yeah. By the way, I still haven't heard much from you about your trip. Did everything go okay?" "Oh, yeah. It was just really busy. I'm sorry, but, everything went great. We secured the contract we were aiming for, so I'm sure Brad will be thrilled. Listen, maybe we should have a talk about something." "You're right. But let's hold off until tomorrow." We spent the rest of the evening chatting over dinner, watching a movie on Netflix. And when we went to bed, we made love with a passion I could hardly remember ever feeling before. The difference between being with Jessica and how things were with Lisa couldn't have been more stark. On Saturday morning, I went for a 50-kilometer bike ride while Jessica headed to her fitness club. We met back at home for lunch, took a shower, and then sat down together. Something happened while I was away, she started. Yeah, of course, I chuckled. The next 4 months were tough, but in a way, it brought Lisa and me closer than ever before. Jessica and Tom seemed to waver between trying to fix their relationships and deciding to end their marriages. But Lisa and I put an end to the back and forth by renting an apartment together and moving in 6 weeks later. As soon as the divorces were finalized, and Jessica and Tom bought out our shares of the houses, Lisa and I bought a place together and got married not long after. I don't know about Jessica and Tom, but I've never looked back. Now, 3 years after that gala, I'm still living the dream. Every night I get to snuggle up to a living, breathing, perfect work of art, and I couldn't be happier.